Hey everybody, it's Oscars time, and there's certain movies that are nominated for Oscars, so let's talk about them. I will be doing a live commentary to the Oscars with some friends, as we do every year, so make sure to check it out. It'll be on this channel, this YouTube channel, and also on my Twitch channel. Link in the description and on the screen. So don't miss it. It's happening Sunday, March 12th. Mark your calendars. Make sure that you have your own way to watch the Oscars, because I'm not going to be streaming the actual Oscars, just our reaction to it. We will be playing some video games before the Oscars, so join at any time. Thank you. So we're just going to talk about these in the order that they show up on IMDb for the 2023 Oscars page. All right, for Best Picture, we have All Quiet on the Western Front. This film is nominated for Best International Feature, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Music, Sound, Visual Effects, Motion Picture of the Year, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, and Production Design. I don't think it deserves international feature, because there's at least one that I liked more than this one. Makeup and hairstyling, sure, no strong feelings. Score, it didn't work well with the film. Sound, way too exaggerated, and just, it kept reminding me I'm in a movie. I don't know why you would give sound to this movie. There was production value to it, but it just, it didn't work with the film. Visual effects, no thank you. They were not great. Motion Picture of the Year, no thank you. Best Adapted Screenplay, I don't know why this movie has so many nominations. Cinematography, sure. It's good cinematography. And then production design, yeah, sure. I don't know why this has so many nominations. This is a weird one. This is a movie that I had the opportunity to see at TIFF, but decided not to because I didn't see the original 1930s film first. Now, after having seen both, I'm glad I watched the original 30s film first, because there are some very similar scenes between them, but they're essentially just different takes on the same novel that the original 1930s film is based on. So they're different movies, very much so, but there are similarities, and I'm glad I watched the original first. The 1930 film I enjoyed quite a lot, actually. It was really impressive for the time. It felt very ahead of its time. A lot of incredible shots. There's a shot through the window that looks really incredible. There's lots of depth. There's lots of things happening in the background, a lot of coordination between actors. It is very epic and has a massive scale. It is super ambitious. The effects look really, really great for 1930s. It essentially just feels like they're putting the actors in danger, which makes it feel a lot more real. I don't know if the actors were in danger. I don't know exactly what sort of safety precautions were taken on set, but it really feels like they're just setting off explosives right next to the actors. The acting could probably use some work. There were some awkward and over-exaggerated line deliveries here and there for sure. Some very expressive faces. I don't know why this movie isn't used more for reaction memes, honestly. But even though the performances weren't always exactly believable, they were still fun to watch. Like, I really love this scene with their expressive faces. It's just kind of fun to watch in kind of like a time capsule-y way. There are some things that I really loved about the structure of this film, and I'll get more into that when comparing it to the 2022 film. I was really into the first half of this film. I thought that it was incredibly well-paced and well-structured. It was intelligently put together in terms of a narrative. It really lost me right after the hour mark, basically. There were some structure issues in the second half of this film that prevented me from enjoying it as much as I could have. In the second half of the film, I was essentially just kind of waiting for it to end, despite really, truly loving the first half. The film did a really great job at capturing the naive nature of these young men going into war and then the true horrors of the war. Overall, it is an incredibly impressive film, and I can understand why it is so well respected, why it is such a classic. I'm glad I watched this one before the newer version, because I honestly prefer this one to the newer version, and I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. This newest German film, directed by Edward Berger, does some things better than the original, but overall was not as much of a fan. This film has some really great shots in it, some fantastic lighting. There's a lot of very aesthetically pleasing shots. It feels artfully presented in many ways, but unfortunately it feels like it has kind of a conflicting tone. Like, it's simultaneously trying to be an art film, but at the same time it's also trying to be a generic epic war movie. And the film's score enforces this by sounding way too modern and just kind of weird and janky, and it's trying to be epic, like it's trying to be super cool and edgy. It's really bizarre, and it feels conflicting with the rest of the film. Different people can have different experiences with music, but for me, it can really make or break the entire film, especially if it's playing throughout the entire film. There were some scenes that I really loved in this movie, and my favorite scenes were ones that did not have that music in it, and I guess there was another one that used a previously existing classical piano piece as well. That scene was great. But this weird distorted bass sound playing for the rest of the film, it really irked me. It bothered me. I could not get into it. The score didn't feel terrible independent from the movie. It just felt like it didn't fit the movie. It felt like it would have been perfectly fine in a different movie. I couldn't deal with it in this film. And it's not just the score that feels weirdly modernistic, but also the visual effects. I am not exaggerating when I say that the visual effects in the 1930s film were remarkably better than this 2022 film. There's a lot of really obvious digital blood and digital effects in general. There's some really bad-looking CG fire. In both films, there's a bunker scene where they're getting attacked and there's dirt falling from the ceiling. And in the 1930s film, it was fucking terrifying. And it felt like the characters were in danger. And in this film, there's way too many cuts. It feels so fake. The tension isn't there in the same way. We see a guy getting blown up, but it lacks any visceral feeling. It feels way too produced and sanitized and just not impactful in this film, and so it was kind of disappointing. Another weirdly modernistic element to this remake, newest version, was the sound design. A lot of sounds had such weirdly over-exaggerated qualities to them, it felt like it was a video game. It felt like when you get a backstab in the PS5 Demon's Souls and you just hear all that crunching in the bones or whatever. It felt like they were kind of going for that. But in Demon's Souls, it's kind of supposed to be over the top and satisfying for the player in that moment. But in this film, it's just it takes me out of the experience and reminds me that it's a movie. Because it doesn't sound natural. It just sounds like way too extra, which is interesting because one of my complaints about the original film is that they were really lacking in terms of sound design, not just from technical limitations at the time, but there are moments where there could have been impact sounds and there just weren't.
No. What did you do that for? Shut up!
The sound effects in the 2022 film are just so over-exaggerated and overproduced, and they just remind me that I'm watching a movie. It's so annoying. Even outside of the combat scenes, the sound effects are super distracting. There's a really weirdly loud slurp when the guy's drinking his tea. It was so weird, it sounded like they played two slurps at once or some shit. The sound design in this film feels like it's trying way too hard to be a big movie. They're spending a lot of money making it feel less impactful. It feels less natural. Now, this 2022 film didn't have as much of a drop-off in terms of how I felt from the beginning to the end. It was, I guess, more consistent than the original 1930s film. But I didn't love it as much as I loved the beginning of the 1930s film, and I guess I was a bit more invested at the end of this 2022 film than I was in the 1930 film. Something that really stuck out to me was just how ineffectively this newer film communicated the naive nature of the young men going into battle. In this newest film, they start the movie with combat scenes, and so you already have an idea of what to expect, and then they go through the whole, like, oh, you're going to go to war, and everybody's like, yeah, this is going to be awesome, and they're getting hyped up and inspired, propaganda, etc. Whereas in the original film, it was much more patient, and it took longer to get into the combat scenes. It didn't start the movie in a combat scene as kind of like a teaser of like, oh, here, remember this is an action movie? This is a big action movie. It didn't do that in the original film. And when we finally did get into the combat in the original, it was just so much more incredible. It was just so much more brutal and shocking. You were kind of thrust into the war with these characters, and there was more opportunity to develop those characters and be attached to them. There were so many points in this newest film where it felt like the implication of the scene was that you were supposed to be like really attached and invested in these characters, but it never happened. And it felt like it was much more effective in the first 1930s film. So yeah, first half of the 1930s film, loved it. And then, yeah, second half, not so much. And this movie is somewhere in between, I guess. This newest film is fine. It didn't really feel like something that was worth it for me to finish, even though I did. By the end of it, I didn't feel any different. It was just fine. It didn't really serve that much of a purpose. It didn't speak to me on a personal level. It didn't really connect with me. This newest film also kind of just felt like it was a weird war boner film, even though it was anti-war. There are certain war films where it's like, oh, war tragedy porn. It doesn't necessarily have to be pro-war for it to be a war porn film, in my opinion. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, isn't this tragic? Isn't this bad? Yeah, it just didn't feel like it was offering that much in terms of substance, and it felt like it was relying a bit too much on the spectacle, which was kind of annoying. Yeah, some talented people that made this film. I don't think that the overall package worked that well for me. Definitely watch the 1930 film. That one was awesome. This one, I'm giving a 6 out of 10. Thank you. Avatar, The Way of Water. I reviewed this on my channel already. I ranted about it for 30 minutes. Nominated for Best Sound, Best Achievement in Visual Effects, Best Motion Picture of the Year, and Best Achievement in Production Design. I mean, sound wasn't as great as some of the other movies I saw. There were some weird sound effects that sounded like they were kind of like TikTok, just repeated YouTube poop sounds. That was kind of weird. Talked about it in my longer review. Visual effects, I think it's got it. There's some incredible visual effects in this movie. Best Picture of the Year, I don't even know why it's nominated for that. That's kind of silly. And then production design, sure. I would have to get better educated on exactly what the production was like, because it's an entirely different world in terms of how they made the film compared to a lot of these other films. So not a huge fan. I thought it was gigantic piece of boring mess. It was a bad film. I was disappointed and my expectations were not that high. The water scenes were cool. Make it shorter. The plot was stupid. Moving on. Goodbye. 3 out of 10. It was 4? Did I rate Avatar: Way of Water a 4? I don't know why it would be a 4. Like, it was so boring. It would have to be a 3 now if I was certain that it was a 3. I'm just changing it to a 3. Like, why would it be a 4 if I detest it this much? All right, it's a 3 now. There's an updated rating. I'm left with basically nothing by the end of the movie. I'm left with basically nothing. I've got like a little, 30-second trailer basically from the movie in my head after that entire 3-hour plus experience or whatever. It was impossible to retain the experience of that film. All right, Elvis 2022. Elvis is nominated for Best Picture of the Year. I don't know why. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Sure. Although Tom Hanks, his old person makeup, especially at the scene in the beginning where he's in the casino, looked kind of bad. It didn't look great. So no. If I can see something wrong with it, I don't feel like it should be in the top 5 of the year, nominated for an Oscar. If there's something wrong with it, I don't know. Certain categories, maybe not all categories, I feel that way. Best Sound, I don't know why. There was a lot of editing. No strong feelings, I guess. Best Performance, nope, not in my opinion. Best Achievement in Cinematography, I don't know. Lighting was good, otherwise, not sure. Costume design, I don't know, maybe it'll win. They're just, I guess, basing it off of real costumes that Elvis wore, so it might win for that reason. I don't know how to measure that, I guess. Best Achievement in Film Editing, please no. One of the worst edited films I've seen the entire year. And then production design, sure, I guess, why not? I'd be more impressed with it if there weren't parts where it felt like it was in a computer, Although I guess you can't fault the production design for that. You would just have to fault the director for... But I guess, is that a part of it? Sometimes difficult to quantify these things. Some people enjoy this movie. I thought it was very bad. I thought it was very embarrassing. This is my first Baz Luhrmann film. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. That's totally fine, I guess. There's many people who say this is just his style. None of his films ever looked particularly appealing to me. I saw the trailer for The Great Gatsby and I was like, wow, this is a period piece, but it looks like they're in a computer. This doesn't look great, and I kind of just stayed away from it. I guess the same thing happened here with Elvis. There's a bunch of scenes where it just feels like you're in a computer. It also feels like you're in a trailer for the film, watching the entire film. The entire thing is edited basically like a trailer. This is nominated for editing, which is funny. It has the most editing out of the nominees, I think, but that doesn't always make it the best. Way too many cuts, feels really janky and ADHD, and just 30 minutes of the film will go by and it'll be like, wait, did anything even happen? Like, what's being developed right now? It lacked substance. It had a personality. I didn't like the personality. Austin Butler did a good job. He wasn't my favorite performance of the year. I don't even know if I would call him like top 5 performance of the year, so I don't know if I believe that he should be nominated. The Academy has a very strong bias towards biopic films and the performances within them. If the casting director figures out how to get someone that already looks like the person that they're portraying and then puts on some makeup, and then it's like, oh wow, they're really that person. It's partly the performance. He did a good job with the performance. He didn't do a bad job with the performance. But when so much of that is also just casting, I don't know if we should just always be giving best actor to those types of roles. It seems like they just have such an incredible bias towards those roles, and it's always kind of frustrating. Apparently now he can't talk properly. He can only say the words baby, 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 because that's what he was doing the whole movie, and his brain is broken. And that's his Oscars campaign. He's trying to make a sob story. I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but that's essentially what's happening. There's parts where it seemed like he was trying to cry, but he couldn't, and so they had to get the eyedropper in, like between the shots, you know? There'd be a tear that just appears on his face in between the cut, and then it would just disappear too. This happens at least twice in the movie, where it just cuts to him and there's suddenly a tear, and then it cuts away and the tear's gone, and it's kind of distracting. It just seems like it's obviously applied between takes. And so, yeah, I mean, he's not my favorite performance of the year. He did fine mostly, just aside from some stuff like that, I guess. It's just, maybe it's the editing. Maybe the editing was so fast it prevented us from seeing the real tier of the actor, which you would either have to remove points from the performance or you have to remove points from the editor, right? Like someone prevented us from experiencing real emotion in that scene and having like instead having a weird distracting moment in more than one scene. So yeah, not a great movie. Tom Hanks was bad. He was actually very bad in the film. I think it was abusive to let Tom Hanks do that in the film. Not like he's the best actor ever or anything, but I don't know why anyone would let him do that. It seemed like he had the weirdest idea of what he thought he should be doing, and someone should have told him no at any point. If you look at interviews of the actual person he's portraying, Colonel Tom Parker, there's video footage of this guy. He doesn't talk anything like how Tom Hanks is talking. So I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know what accent he was trying to perform, because it doesn't sound like the person that he was portraying in the film.
So I did my part, Elvis did his show, and we were lucky. Great talent. We had a great show and a lot of fun.
I think Mr. Presley could be persuaded to make the International his home. Grandma told you. What is that behind your ear? You are not one of Hewlett's long-haired Zeppelins. You are Elvis Presley. You are beloved. I am a promoter. That is what I do. No, they are not putting a colored boy on the hayride.
That's the thing. He's white.
He's white? Here comes Santa Claus and wishes everyone Merry Christmas and good night.
This movie was not as bad as Blonde, I guess, but it wasn't as fun to watch as Blonde, because Blonde was more of a train wreck, and Blonde was just... The choices in that film were so much more out there, whereas this was just like, oh, I'm editing it like a weird trailer, and nothing matters throughout the course of this entire very long film, 2 hours and 39 minutes. The dialogue, not great. Nothing felt natural. It often felt like a Tim and Eric movie. Like it was all just supposed to be ironic or some shit. There's so many conflicting music choices in this film, which I don't know how you justify those music choices.
Hey, Elvis.
It's not just a period piece, it's a period piece about a musician, and you would assume that people who want to see the film about Elvis are probably more into Elvis music and not trap Beats by Doja Cat or whoever that was. I have no idea what was going on there. And those are just in the middle of the movie. That's weird. There was a Britney Spears Toxic remix where they mixed one of Elvis's songs with Britney Spears Toxic. And again, this is a period piece. This is before Britney Spears. I don't know why any of this was happening. There's some really awful choices in the end credits for songs. Also, Eminem did a song for the movie. There are a lot of weird choices that did not work for me at all. Throughout the movie, I was mostly just wishing that I was watching Walk Hard instead, because it really just felt like a parody of a biopic as I was watching it. Just not as funny as Walk Hard. It just wasn't, this just wasn't great. Oh yeah, there was a Backstreet Boys song for like 2 seconds. Literally 2 seconds long. They played a Backstreet Boys song. It was crazy. You think I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. It was literally like 2 seconds of a Backstreet Boys song. It's like this film will start doing something and then just immediately change its mind. And that's how it's edited. Like, it's just, even in scenes where there's supposed to be something cohesive happening, even in scenes where it's not, I guess, supposed to feel like a previously on Elvis montage, there's still just the tiniest shots in the world. Tiniest meaning shortest running shot. There's some shots that feel like they're 10 frames. Here's an example.
There will be a Christmas song.
There's also no chemistry between Tom Hanks and Austin Butler. Like, their characters just have like no chemistry whatsoever. No screen chemistry. It's just not fun to watch. It feels so misguided and so stupid. It's a very boring film, and they just keep cutting. There's no time to soak in anything. Even in scenes that aren't necessarily short, the shots are so short in each scene where I can't absorb anything about the movie. It's constantly preventing me from doing that. So I don't even know how we're supposed to comment really on the cinematography nomination unless they're just purely talking about the lighting. Then I guess the lighting was fine, because it's really difficult to soak in anything about like the framing of shots when they're all so fucking quick. And, you know, if we're going to include cinematography in terms of like how a film is presented, I would say, you know, I guess editing, I don't know. Sometimes it's a little difficult to pinpoint exactly what they mean by cinematography. I think they're talking mostly about the lighting. So I guess in that sense, sure. But Jesus. There's nothing wrong with having style in your film. Crank is something I rewatched recently. That film has a lot of style in the editing, but it works with the film. It's not working actively against the film. In Crank, the whole premise of the movie is sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or else the character dies, and it's just one hyperactive, energy-fueled film. The editing works with the film. In this weird-ass biopic period piece of Elvis, it feels like nothing's being properly developed and it's not going anywhere. And the editing is preventing things from going anywhere. The editing is preventing things from being developed. It's a very confusing film, not necessarily even just in terms of what's happening narratively, but just why these choices are made at all. There's nothing good about these choices. I guess Baz Luhrmann, I guess they have some fans who just really love this style of filmmaking, but holy crap, it does not gel with me at all. I did not think this was a great film. Down with Baz Luhrmann, up with Baz Punpriya, director of One for the Road. Yeah. We're taking Baz back, okay? We're giving it to the Punpriya is who we're doing it with. 2 out of 10. Shit, it's very bad. It's an awful, torturous experience, and I feel stupid for having watched it, but very smart for not having watched it in theaters. I knew that it would be torture if I saw it in theaters instead of doing it on my watch-alongs channel. So you can watch along with me and hear me complain about the film in real time if you want to watch along the film with me on the watch-alongs channel. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I posted a review for this on my channel already way back when. I saw it before you did. Okay, you're all copying me because I enjoyed the film and nobody has original thoughts or feelings. So you lose. It's nominated for 11 Oscars. So Best Original Screenplay, sure, why not? Best Achievement in Music for Motion Pictures, sure, why not? Best Achievement in Music written Yeah, so there's an original song. David Byrne and Mitski and Ryan Lott. I'm not familiar with that person. It'd be cool if Mitski won an Oscar. So yeah, sure, why not? I just don't remember what that song is like. Best Motion Picture of the Year. Sure, why not? I feel like it could get it. Best Achievement in Directing, The Daniels. That'd be cool. Why not? Best Performance, Michelle Yeoh. Why not? But Cate Blanchett did much better, so I would prefer Cate Blanchett. Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role, Stephanie Hsu. Why not? Sure. I'm glad she has a nomination. Jamie Lee Curtis, I don't know why she's nominated for this, but she was good. She was really good in it. That would be weird if she won. Best Actor Supporting, Ke Huy Quan? Ke Huy Quan is how the actor himself says it, so that's how it is. But yeah, that would be dope. I would love to see him win an Oscar for this. That would be so cool. Best Achievement in Costume Design? Sure, why not? There were a lot of costumes. Best Achievement in Film Editing? Sure. I mean, the editing worked for this film really well. So yeah, why not? My biggest, I guess, criticism is that, I love the music in this film in the sense that I think it accomplishes a lot and it is varied and it's ambitious, going for a lot of different tones because there's a lot of different styles in the film, and I think that it nails those styles. But in terms of the actual composition itself, for each of those styles, I wish that those bits were more memorable. The most memorable part of the score was in the opening of the film, which I thought was awesome. There's kind of like chaotic sounding score, but then, yeah, I don't know. The rest of it, I felt like could have been a bit more memorable in the actual composition. Still, really great movie. It's very ambitious, especially in concept and goals, and it pulls it off. It's really, really well-made film. Watch it. 9 out of 10. Everybody seems to love it. So everyone, you're all copying me. Sorry. Banshees of Inisherin. I have a review for that as well. My TIFF video. You can watch that. I give this film a 9 out of 10. This film is nominated for 9 Oscars. Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role, Carrie Condon. Sure. She was great. Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, Colin Farrell. Yes, he was great. Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures, Carter Burwell. I mean, it was good. Not my favorite score of the year, I guess, but it was really good. He's a big name, so... Best Motion Picture of the Year? Sure. It's my second favorite movie of the year, I guess. Best Achievement in Directing? Sure, why not? Martin McDonagh. Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role, Brendan Gleeson. He was great. Best Performance Supporting Role, Barry Keoghan. That would be cool. Another great nomination. Best Original Screenplay, Martin McDonagh. It could win. Great screenplay. Best Achievement in Film Editing? Sure, why not? I enjoy this more than Everything Everywhere All at Once. Very mild criticisms of this film. Some CG fire, Could have looked better. Otherwise, great writing. I think it'll probably win screenplay. Great performances. Colin Farrell, amazing job in this film. Yeah, check it out. The Fabelmans. There's a review for this in my TIFF video as well. Was not a huge fan. Nominated for Best Achievement in Directing. It feels obligatory. I don't know. Didn't love the movie. Music, John Williams. Feels obligatory. It's fine. Really not memorable. Best Motion Picture of the Year, Please No. Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role, Michelle Williams. She did good. Didn't stand out from any of her other performances. Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role, Judd Hirsch. That's a weird one. He was in the movie for like 2 seconds. He did good, but I don't know why he's nominated. Best Original Screenplay. No thank you. Best Achievement in Production Design. Sure, maybe. It definitely had production value to it. A lot of it felt really fake and sappy and kind of Oscar baity. A lot of shots didn't feel real. Some outdoor shots that felt like they were shot in a warehouse, and I guess you could argue like, oh, because it's a movie, but I didn't really seem all that intentional. Maybe you could convince me otherwise, but it just seems to be how Steven Spielberg shoots a lot of his more recent films anyway. I didn't connect with it. It was very boring and masturbatory, and I don't care. So if you loved this movie, great, happy for you, but didn't connect with me. And the beauty about having different brains existing in different people is that not every film that connects with you is going to connect with somebody else. So just, it doesn't matter, and you can enjoy it. 5 out of 10. Top Gun Maverick. There's a review existing for this one already on my channel. Check that one out. It's nominated for 6 Oscars. Best Achievement in Film Editing. Sure, maybe, I guess. Best Music Written for Motion Pictures Original Song, Lady Gaga and Blood Pop, or Blood Poop, Hold My Hand. Didn't love it, so no thank you. Best Sound. It is a very loud movie, and also I did enjoy the sounding in the movie. Best achievement in visual effects? Sure. I mean, it all looked great. The visual effects were very well done. I think Avatar is going to win, but it'd be cool if Top Gun Maverick won. Best motion picture of the year? Sure, why not? Wouldn't even be mad about it. Not my favorite movie of the year. Wouldn't be mad, though. Best adapted screenplay? What the It's nominated for screenplay? What? No, it's not. Oh, adapted. It's nominated for adapted. How come this... Wow. I already kind of did a video reacting to the nominations, and somehow, no pun intended, it flew over my head. I guess that pun was intended. But anyway, weird. I just don't understand how it gets a best screenplay nomination, either adapted or original. That's weird. It's not a movie that I love for the screenplay. Maybe don't go to the bathroom with all the great writing and the non-action scenes. I don't even think I did go to the bathroom. I think I wanted to. Basically, like many other Tom Cruise films, loved the action scenes, but the action scenes are not the whole movie. Half the movie I would call go to the bathroom scenes because you can just go to the bathroom and you don't miss anything and you can just come back and it doesn't matter. The dramatic scenes were kind of cheesy and annoying. Loved the action. Very, very well shot. Loved the practical nature to the action. Everything looked amazing, and the way that the music was used with it, and yeah, just an exhilarating thrill ride. So if I forgot about the other half of the movie, this would just be probably a perfect movie. Or if the other half of the movie didn't exist, it would probably be a perfect movie. But the bathroom scenes weigh it down. I can understand why it had such a huge impact, why so many people love it. I also love it, just not the bathroom scenes. I could imagine myself buying this on 4K Blu-ray and then just fast forwarding through like half the movie and having a great time. You know, just engaging with the action scenes and then just not watching the other scenes. They're not like the worst thing in the world. They're just a lot of wasted opportunity. It's not compelling, great dialogue or, you know, performances or conflict or characters or plot. It's there to get to the action scenes and for you to be able to go to the bathroom between the action scenes. So great movie at parts. 6 out of 10, closer to a 7 than a 5. Thank you. Who knows? Maybe on my second watch, I will raise it to a 7. We'll see how that goes. And even if this won Best Picture, I wouldn't even be mad. You know, it would be fine. I'd be okay with that. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? It was definitely a movie that people loved. So. Triangle of Sadness, the new Robert Ostlund film. Ruben Ostlund. Ostlund. Triangle of Sadness is nominated for 3 Oscars. Best Motion Picture of the Year. That would be interesting. I mean, I liked the movie a lot. Best Original Screenplay. I could be down with that. It was a really good screenplay. And then Best Achievement in Directing. I'm glad they gave it a directing nom because Ruben Ostlund is really great. So yeah, why not? I'm glad he's getting recognized more. So there's a review for this in my TIFF video. Long story short, I thought this movie was great. I liked the first half more than I liked the second half, but still really outrageous. It's a riot. It's so much fun. It's profane. It's hilarious. It was great to watch in a crowd. Maybe don't watch it if you're one of the people that throws up if you see someone else throwing up, because my existence on the internet has alerted me of those people, and so I'm just adding that warning. Maybe cover your eyes for parts of the movie, because it does a great job at making you believe that those people are throwing up. It's not like one of those crappy movie moments. It's like, oh, wow, that feels like real. Yeah, lots of fun. 8 out of 10. Highly recommend. Very funny film. Tar, starring Cate Blanchett. Directed by Todd Field. Tar is nominated for 6 Oscars. Best performance by an actress in the leading role, Cate Blanchett. I hope she wins. She was incredible. Loved her performance in this film. Best Motion Picture of the Year. Wouldn't be unhappy because it is my favorite movie of the year. I think a lot of people would hate it if it won. I think a lot of people are rooting for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and a lot of people that aren't as into slower films would probably just absolutely hate this movie if they watched it. This is a great movie for me. It's not for everybody. Best Achievement in Directing, Todd Field. I mean, wouldn't be unhappy at all. I thought it was an incredibly directed film. Best Original Screenplay, again, would not be unhappy. Great screenplay. Best Achievement in Cinematography. Loved the cinematography. So hell yeah. And Best Achievement in Film Editing. Loved it. Loved the editing in this film. So yeah, if this movie won all 6 of the awards it's nominated for, I would not be unhappy. Some people would be very unhappy about the Best Picture win, but it's not. I don't think it's going to win anyway, so I think we're fine. My favorite movie of 2022 so far, out of the ones that I've seen. So very incredibly presented character study. It's a slow burn. The length is justified as well. It's eerie and kind of suspenseful and sometimes chaotic, and it feels like there's more to scratch at under the surface and more to unpack about the film and what it's going for thematically. And just there's even if you're just looking at it purely on a surface level, it's a great character study. It's a great character movie. Like there's so much depth to her performance and how the character is written and just how things are presented. I love the cinematography. I love the long takes. I could watch this movie again in a heartbeat. It is exactly the type of film that that works for me. This is something that speaks to me. It's something that I definitely vibe with. There's another review for it already on my channel. Love the movie. 9 out of 10. Not for everybody. I dig it very much so. I think it's incredible. I think it's fantastic. Very meticulously made, very professionally presented. And yeah. All right, Women Talking is directed by Sarah Polley. It's nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. Surprisingly not for Best Director, because I thought it would be kind of the obvious pick to include Sarah Polley, because over the past decade plus, the Oscars have been trying to include female directors, and this just seemed like the obvious one to include. It's nominated for Best Picture, and it was well directed for sure. It was a well directed movie. But yeah, I guess the Oscars can't possibly just add one more nominee. There's no reason why it has to be 5 and only 5. You could have 6 one year, The amount of Best Picture nominees hasn't stayed the same every year. There's been a year where it was like 9. There's been a year where it was 5. A lot of years where it was 5, some years where it's 10. I don't know how many it is this year, probably 10. So there's nothing preventing them from just adding an extra slot to be a bit more inclusive. I don't understand why they don't do that. That seems like the really easy, obvious solution. And that way no one can complain like, oh yeah, you're forcing out someone else who deserved it more, who was a male, trying to, be inclusive, affirmative action, blah, 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 blah. You can just include more nominations. I don't know why they don't do that. That just seems so silly. And although I thought this was a well-directed movie, I was a little bit disappointed by it. I thought that it was great in the first 30 minutes, maybe less. I thought it was super engaging. It started out with a really interesting premise, a really interesting conflict. Great cast. This movie has a great cast. Jessie Buckley is awesome in this movie. Rooney Mara is really good. Frances McDormand is barely in it, so don't see this movie just for her. But yeah, for the most part, most of the performances in this movie were really great, aside from maybe like 1 or 2 younger actors. I really loved the music in this film. I thought that for the most part, it was really interesting and not way too insistent and still emotional, but not quite manipulative for the most part. There was maybe one scene close to the end where I felt like it was a bit unnecessary, and I was more interested in the fictional version of the movie where that it didn't have music in that scene, because my biggest issue with the film is its structure, and the pacing is a byproduct of the structure issues. Basically, this film has a really strong beginning and a really strong end, and everything just kind of stays at the same level throughout the entire middle of the film. And it's a long middle. It's well over, it's like an hour, 20 minutes where it just stays the same and not much progresses and not much happens. Without completely spoiling the movie, essentially there's a bunch of women in a Mennonite colony in 2010 who find out that they are being abused in their sleep. And I'm not going to go into detail what the abuse is because I'll get demonetized, but it's some sort of abuse while they're unconscious. They find out about it, and they have a meeting to decide whether or not they should stay in the colony, run away, or fight. The men in the colony are essentially saying, you have to forgive us, or else you're not going to get into the kingdom of heaven. And they take that seriously because it's, a religious colony, so people have that sort of control over other people. And so they're seriously considering, like, what if we don't get into the kingdom of heaven? And it's a really bad situation, obviously. But I was really hoping for some sort of narrative progression in terms of getting from addressing the conflict and exploring the options to the end of the movie where, they obviously pick one of those options. It really didn't feel like there was any sort of natural stepping stones from minute 20 of the movie to hour 40. And just the middle chunk of the film feels like it's meandering and not really doing anything. And sure, there's some great performances in there, and that's what really holds it up and prevents me from feeling like it's a huge waste of time. There's still things to appreciate about the film within that middle chunk, but narratively, it's just such a wasted opportunity, in my opinion. And the reason why I strongly feel that way is because the information dump at the beginning beginning of the movie, they just say a lot of things that happened before the movie started. They do a lot of telling and not showing, and they say, this is what the situation is, and they start on a really strong, heavy note because we're just immediately into the conflict. Whereas if I were structuring the movie, just based on how slow the middle of this movie feels, I would have spent about half an hour developing these characters, showing how they live in the colony, showing their dynamic with other people in the colony. They start out the movie and they say, oh, the men have been telling us that it's just ghosts or demons. I wanted to see that confrontation, and we never saw it. They just kind of say that that's a confrontation that happened before the movie started. And so it seems like they were really insistent on just having the movie start at such a strong, like, oh, we're in the middle of the conflict already. But if they had just been a bit more patient at the beginning, then the middle of the film wouldn't have felt so stretched out. They could have easily added half an hour at the beginning of the film, felt like more of a natural progression into the conflict. You know, we could have seen them getting gaslit. We could have seen them starting to figure out that this abuse is taking place. We could have seen, you know, the trauma and drama of these women discovering that this is taking place, and then the stigma, and then, like, who do we talk to? You know, does one of them talk to their husbands, or do they immediately reach out to one of the other women? It would have been interesting to explore, but it starts after that, which wouldn't be an issue if the middle of this movie didn't feel like it was dragging on narratively. So yeah, it feels like all of that was underdeveloped because they left no room for progression in the middle of the film. It felt empty in the entire middle of the film. And, you know, I'm watching it and just thinking, okay, well, clearly this is going to pick up at the end because they're going to make one of those decisions. And it does pick back up at the end, but it left me feeling so empty in terms of the entirety of the experience. For the most part, it was well shot, you know, well directed, well acted. Some people had some issues with the color grading, and I don't know if I'm enough of an expert on color grading to be able to call it bad. I don't get the impression that it was bad color grading, but I will say that typically I just don't gravitate towards more grayish kind of movies. You know, it still felt like it fit the tone of what it was going for. Yeah, not really much else to say about it. Jessie Buckley was probably my favorite performance. She's great. And yeah, 6 out of 10. It's not a low 6 out of 10. It's either a solid 6 or a high 6, maybe. But I think solid 6 is probably the best thing to leave it on, because I'm already kind of forgetting it. I watched it yesterday, and there's not a whole lot about it that is going to stick with me. It was a perfectly fine film. I just wish that they developed more of what took place before the movie started in order to have it drag on less in the middle of the film. It felt like they took one gigantic step at the beginning and then just stayed on the same level for it throughout the entire movie, and then took another step at the end. And it's just like, okay, I would rather have had several steps throughout the entire film and not just what we got from this film. 6 out of 10. Thank you. All right, The Whale is nominated for a few awards. Best Achievement in Makeup and Hairstyling. I mean, yeah, the makeup and hairstyling was awesome. The fat suit worked really well. I thought it was really great prosthetics, and it didn't feel like it was a guy in a fat suit. It really just felt like it was a guy. It felt like it was an obese man. Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, Brendan Fraser. Loved him in this movie, so yeah, I think he totally deserves it. Brendan Fraser, I really hope he wins Best Actor for this. Not just like he deserves it, wounded puppy sob story thing, but I think that his performance was like genuinely great. The combined elements of his performance and the music and the cinematography and the makeup and just all of the elements of that film working together, they had me feeling some real emotions. And yeah, it was some parts were kind of just burned into my memory, and it had a large part to do with his performance. I feel like he absolutely nailed it. Hope he wins. We'll see what happens. Yep. And then Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role, Hong Chow. She was great. Maybe not my favorite of the year for supporting role, but I mean, sure, if she wins. And for some reason, I guess I remembered The Whale being nominated for Best Picture, but now I'm realizing it's not, which is interesting because, I mean, it was really, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I gave that an 8 out of 10. I connected with it emotionally. I thought that it had really fantastic sound design and directing overall, you know, very minor issues that I had with The Whale, but there's not a lot of terrible nominations this year. There's a lot of great nominations. Anyway, if you want to hear my more detailed thoughts on The Whale, watch my TIFF video where I go into more detail about the film. 8 out of 10. Aftersun is nominated for 1 Oscar, It is for Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, Paul Mescal. I think that is an entirely deserved nomination. I think that he was fantastic in the film. He did a really great performance. It could have been nominated for more than that. I mean, it could have been nominated for, I don't know, maybe screenplay, but it's nice that this movie is getting recognized. I wasn't expecting it to get an Oscar nom, really. Yeah, Paul Mescal, incredible job. So glad it's getting some recognition. I go into more detail about this film in my TIFF video, and I think I also talked about it in my Vancouver Film Fest video. I think I saw the film twice, and I went into more detail in my second watch video than I did my first watch. It is a see it twice movie, not for everybody, but I liked it. 7 out of 10. Blonde is nominated for 1 Oscar, Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role, Ana de Armas. And she could definitely cry. She's good at crying. I don't think that that's all there is to a performance. I think if you're portraying a real life person, then perhaps your accent should be a bit more polished. She sounded Chilean the entire movie. I do not think Marilyn Monroe sounded Chilean. Maybe someone can fact check me, but I don't think it was intended to sound like that. Yeah, a very bizarre, very bad movie, very misguided and very funny. It was a very funny film. Her performance wasn't the worst part of it, I guess. That's for sure. It feels weird that this is nominated for any Oscars. It feels like this film maybe shouldn't be recognized at the Oscars, but I think they all kind of felt bad for Ana de Armas being a part of this. I think this is just an award that you give her because you feel bad that she was in the movie. Like, I don't know. Definitely watch my YMS Watches Blonde video, and you can see what I mean by how absolutely crazy the film is. The video is demonetized, so maybe if you go on Patreon, you can see the uncensored version. That would help out because the video is demonetized. Even the censored version got demonetized. There are some, I guess, subjects that YouTube doesn't want people to be covering. So, oops, still making content anyway. To Leslie has 1 nomination. It is for Best Actress in a Leading Role, Andrea Riseborough. And I just watched this movie recently, and she was really, really great in it. Not my favorite performance of the year, but I'm glad the movie's getting recognized because I actually liked it a lot for more than just the performance. I thought that it was a very mature and appropriately, intelligently presented film. And it was a really earnest character piece, and I liked the concept, and I liked its portrayal of addiction. I really liked the choices that were made in this film. There were ways in which scenes were communicated by, sometimes just how far away she was from the camera, where you could interpret a bit more than just the surface level of what's happening in the scene. And you're like, okay, I understand what that's doing thematically. I understand why it's making that choice. There were a lot of moments like that in the film that I really appreciated. Overall, it's just, it feels... It's confusing to me why a movie like this can just go under the radar and not get much attention at all. Now it has an Oscar nomination, but a movie like this goes under the radar and then Nomadland is like Best Picture winner. Like, that's just confusing to me because I thought this was a much better film. Sure, the cinematography is better in Nomadland in terms of how aesthetically pleasing the shots look, but in terms of, I guess, how the shots are motivated and what it describes about the characters in the film, I would say that this film did it better. The music was sparingly used. There's lots of really interesting editing choices that I liked a lot. And yeah, this was just a very intelligently directed movie. I'll definitely be checking out whatever Michael Morris directs next. I thought that this was a really great film. 8 out of 10. And sure, yeah, she deserves an Oscar nomination for it. Some mild criticism with her performance. I guess she could have done the physicality of acting drunk a bit better. There were some parts where, her vocal performance was really on point, but I just felt, could have been a little bit better in the physicality. Still, I mean, top 5 of the year, sure. She nailed her accent. She felt like a really genuine character. And yeah, I'm happy she's getting recognized. There's a bit of a controversy as to her being nominated because it was a grassroots campaign and not like a studio backed for your consideration campaign. And it's a bit more complicated than people are presenting it. It's not just like you didn't pay money for this thing. I thought it was at first, the way that people were talking about it. I looked into it, and it's more to do with their rules on how involved with a film someone has to be if they're going to be contacting Academy members directly and stuff like that. These are rules that existed before. And so there was some kind of gray area, and I can understand why it was investigated, but I'm glad that they kept the nomination because it's a film that deserves to be recognized. I really enjoyed this one. It was a pleasant surprise. 8 out of 10. Thank you. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. It's nominated for costume design and makeup and hairstyling and original song and visual effects and actress in a supporting role. I don't have very strong feelings about the costume design category. Makeup and hairstyling, I mean, sure, but The Whale did it better, I guess. Music, original song, I don't even remember what it sounded like. I don't know if I have very strong opinions on that category at all this year. We'll have to see what else is nominated, I guess. Visual effects, there were some good visual effects in this movie, but I mean, I don't know if it's worth a nomination, especially with how a fight scene near the end looked, which is weird because it feels like they kind of just fell into the same trap that they did with the first film, where they had this weird PS3 looking fight scene near the end of the film that just stands out in particular. Like, I don't know, did they run out of money? No idea. Best performance by an actress in a supporting role, Angela Bassett. She did a really great job. I really liked her performance. If she won, I wouldn't be disappointed. There's one scene where it's definitely like, oh yeah, this is your Oscar scene. And yeah, she did a really great job. There's like, lip quivering. You can tell that she's very emotionally affected and it feels genuine. So the movie was kind of boring. It was way too long. And surprisingly, the first, hour of the movie, the first half of the movie even maybe, it was surprisingly well paced and I wasn't bored. And second half just kind of lost me. It's just, I don't know why it was that long. And I have a theory about why every movie is deciding to be long right now. It's because now content is made with streaming services in mind. So Disney is not just thinking about the theatrical run, but they're also thinking about this film being on Disney Plus. The longer things are on your streaming service, the more content people will have to catch up on. There's less time for people to finish the thing, and so they won't be running out of content as quickly. And so you're just kind of playing the game of like, oh, it'll take them longer to watch this, and then they'll stay subscribed longer, So that's my theory anyway. A lot of things are just being turned into like miniseries now, so. I liked the song choices in the movie for the most part. I thought that they were mostly appropriate and fitting. There was maybe one part in an underwater scene where I was like, okay, that one just didn't feel like it fit, but I really liked the vibe of most of the movie. There's some really weird audio issues in this movie. It sounds like a guy's talking through Discord at one point.
If you tell the Americans about us, if you try to find us, I will come to Wakanda and I will kill you.
And the rest of the movie doesn't sound like that. It's just him in that one scene. It was just really bizarre. I don't know what was happening there. There's a character with wings on his ankles, and it feels and looks very stupid and silly, and I don't like it. The physics don't make any sense. I get it. It's a Marvel movie. It's so janky and unnerving and disturbing to look at, really. It's such a bad design choice. It looks awful. I can't vibe with it at all. It feels awkward and stupid. I don't like it. It doesn't feel like that's where he's flying from. Why is he skating? How does it help him to be doing the running skating motion while he's doing that? Is it not from the wings flapping? The balance feels like it would be just so off. This was an improvement from the first film for me in some ways. I think I enjoyed this one more overall. I digged the vibes a bit more. There was no "what are those" scene in this film, although they did have some kind of cringe moments. There was a part where they were just like, this is just like those other movies, and then they list movies that Disney owns the rights to.
Princess Leia, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, that white chick from Indiana Jones.
It's kind of distracting and unnecessary, and then it raises questions like, I guess Disney is in the MCU canonically. Like, I guess George Lucas is a character in the MCU now. There's a part in the movie where they had Anderson Cooper on CNN, and I was like, I guess Anderson Cooper is a character in the MCU now. There's other reporters that exist in the MCU, like J. Jonah Jameson is one of them. I'm sure they have more to work with. Like, why do you have to throw in real-world reporters like that? Like, I would like to believe that this is another world, so I don't have to worry about how little sense any of this makes. I don't like when it's pretending to be in this world. I guess I should also say the way that they handled Chadwick Boseman's death was pretty nice. It was, it was respectful. It was a nice little tribute. Narratively, it feels kind of thrown together, and I guess it would have to be, but I don't know. This is one of very few movies where I found myself wondering, would this have been better as a dump of text at the beginning? Usually that kind of annoys me. Usually that's just like, whatever, exposition, like, find a better way to communicate it. Whereas watching this film, I feel like that might have been the best option. It immediately opens up and they're like, he's dying of an incurable disease, and they can't save him, but they never show him because he's like dead before the production of the movie starts, you know? So it just felt kind of clunky. I don't know if there was a better way to do it, but it felt respectful to him, the real life person, at the very least. I would have much rather enjoyed this movie if the action scenes were longer, because the action scenes weren't bad. It just felt like there was so long in between waiting for them to get back to the action. And I'm not, my favorite movie of the year was fucking Tar, right? So it's not like I'm this, everything needs to be action, I can't pay attention to dialogue sort of thing. It just needs to be compelling dialogue. It needs to be a compelling story with compelling characters. And this I don't know, most Marvel movies don't really satisfy that for me. A lot of these movies are made with younger audiences in mind. Not saying that you can't do that and still make a compelling or entertaining story, but a lot of these it's more focused on just pre-existing characters existing in the film and just being like, oh, this comic book character I get to see them in a movie form now. That's what it feels like to me anyway. And so a lot of this movie goes by and it feels like it's kind of just blue balling for action. Like you finally get the action and then it's over before you know it. And I wish that it was more complex or just lasted longer. I wish it was more of a spectacle because that's why you would want to go see a movie like this, is for the spectacle, right? Yeah, just way, way too long with the dialogue scenes in between the action. It was just so... I don't know what they were thinking. There was a bunch of moments in the film that felt stupid. They did not make sense. I don't know if it's worth it for me to go into detail about those things right now. There were some attempts at humor that didn't land, that felt really kind of out of place, like they were just trying to check a box off of the list. Like, oh, we got to have a Marvel humor moment here. And it just didn't work. Sometimes there was nothing at all within the scene that was humorous aside from that moment. And even in that moment, it wasn't. It just was clear that it was trying to be. So that was weird. And yeah, I guess my biggest problems with this movie is that it's unnecessarily exhausting. There's plenty about it that's perfectly competent and enjoyable, but there's just so much nonsense eating up the runtime for absolutely no reason in between everything that I find enjoyable about this film. So action scenes, very unsatisfyingly short and over before you know it. 5 out of 10 for me. This film's a 5 out of 10. Thank you. Glass Onion is nominated for 1 Oscar, and it's adapted screenplay. I don't know why it's nominated for that, because even though I didn't think the movie was bad, I thought it was decent. Screenplay is definitely not one of my favorite parts about it. I didn't think the screenplay was particularly great, honestly. I thought that it was a fine comedy. I liked some of the comedic performances in it. Not nearly as interesting as the first movie. Longer review in my TIFF video. Maybe check that out, okay? 6 out of 10. Also, I cannot read the word onion without thinking of that French guy in that YouTube video who talks about how to cut an onion, but he says oignon. How to dice an oignon? He just says it like 800 times in the video. It's crazy.
How do we dice an onion? Boy, that's a big onion. Look at that. Woo!
Bardo, A False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, is nominated for 1 Oscar, and I'm actually shocked. It's for cinematography, and the cinematography is pretty fantastic, as is the cinematography in most Alejandro González Iñárritu films. It is done by Darius Kondji. I'm not sure who that is, but cinematography in this is like really, he worked with Michelle Haneke. He was the cinematography on Amour. No wonder it looks great. Jesus. Yeah, so wouldn't be upset about that. It's a really, really nice looking film. It's not for everybody. I could see this film irritating a lot of people, and did I talk about this? I know where I talked about it. I talked about it in my quickie catch-up video. My end of the year live stream, 2022 quickie catch-up /Q&A. So it's at 58 minutes and 12 seconds. If anybody wants to watch me go into more detail about Bardo, more like Bardo, I gave it a 7. Not for everybody. I give it a 7. Babylon is nominated for 3 Oscars. Best Achievement in Production Design. Sure, why not? Production design was great in the film. Best Achievement in Music for Motion Pictures, Justin Hurwitz. I thought that the score was mostly great. It didn't work in every scene, but I liked that there was like a good theme that was being reincorporated in different variations. I liked that a lot. Best Achievement in Costume Design, Mary Zofres. Why not? There were some good costumes in the film. Yeah, no strong feelings about it. I went into more detail about Babylon in a different video. Maybe watch that if you want more detail about Babylon. 6 out of 10. It was too long. It's crazy. There's some people that are like giving me shit on my interpretation of the ending as if there's like an objective way to interpret it. As if like death of the artist doesn't exist. You know? Isn't that crazy? First of all, I don't even think Damien Chazelle explained it, but I'm not the only one who feels that way about the ending, for sure. All right, The Batman is nominated for 3 Oscars. Best makeup and hairstyling. I thought it was honestly fantastic. Colin Farrell is the Penguin. That was incredible makeup. So if anything were to steal it from The Whale, this would be it. It wouldn't even be a steal. It would be totally deserved. Best sound, I guess. Sure, why not? It was loud. And then visual effects. I mean, yeah, the visual effects in this movie are really good, so sure. More detailed thoughts in a different video I made. I give this movie a 6 out of 10. It was good. Yeah, watch the other video. RRR is nominated for 1 Oscar, Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures, Original Song. It is for the song and dance number for the song Natu Natu. I'm not huge on this film at all. I saw Bahubali: The Beginning from the same director. I was not huge on that also. I am irritated by movies that even if I watch them in the original language, there's still a considerable amount of obvious dubbing. Not a huge fan of that. I wish that it was a bit more standardized in that sense. Like, you know, just give me subtitles. Give me one language track option where I can watch the movie and it's not obviously dubbed. That would be nice. But there's no such thing for movies by this director, apparently. I haven't seen every film from this director, but a lot of Indian movies are this way because there's a lot of different regions and a lot of different languages, and they just decide to film in a mishmash of different regions and languages. And I guess dubbing is just the standard. And so, you know, if you're Telugu, the original language of the movie is in Telugu, but then there's other scenes that I guess were filmed in Hindi and then they just do a Telugu dub. And it's just like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. It's like really distracting. I thought that it was very bloated. I wasn't attached to the characters. It was impossible for me to get into. It was basically an Indian Marvel movie. I'm not a big fan of Marvel movies. I'm not a big fan of Bollywood. I know it's not Bollywood. I know it's a Telugu film, but a lot of the same things that I don't like about Bollywood films are also in this. It's a big budget Indian movie. Does that mean that every movie that comes from India is bad? No, of course not. It's a style of filmmaking that does not connect with me. It obviously connects with a lot of other people. There's certain formulas and things that appear on checklists of different films and different styles of filmmaking. I've criticized a lot of the checklists that appear in American films as well. But yeah, I guess at some point I'll watch the Apu trilogy because that's supposed to be really good. There was one action scene that I liked in this movie closer to the end. Unfortunately, it's 3 hours and 7 minutes long, so it took forever to get to that point. I don't remember at what point in the movie I decided to do this, probably I think about halfway through, but I watched the remainder of the movie in 1.5 times speed, and it felt no different. It genuinely felt no different because the entire movie is just constantly like slowed down and sped up anyway. It's like it's Zack Snyder style, basically. And there's so much manipulation when it comes to the frame rate and the timing of the scenes that watching it in 1.5 times speed, it doesn't even feel like there's anything wrong because the entire movie is basically like that anyway. It already feels janky and weird. Like I mentioned about All Quiet on the Western Front 2022, music can really make or break a film for me. Despite this film having such a large budget, they used keyboard trumpets, which I find absolutely irritating. And maybe if you don't find that irritating, or maybe you don't notice, like that's fine. If you're able to just watch a movie having like it's like nails on a chalkboard for me. And they use these keyboard trumpets despite having the budget where you could just use the real instruments, like get an orchestra or something. Like this is a big budget film, and they still decided to do that, and it's very irritating. It's wacky and over the top. I get it. I get that it's supposed to be. The humor didn't gel with me that well. The self-awareness didn't gel with me that well. It just feels like a very one-note film, and I don't like the note, so I don't know how I'm supposed to like the film. A lot of people think this movie was snubbed. I don't relate to that. I don't even think it should be nominated for any Oscars. But here it is. It's getting recognized. Obviously, the director loves making movies. I might not like the movies he makes. I might not connect with the stories he's trying to tell or the presentation of his films, how things are communicated. But it's clear that he has a passion and he enjoys making movies. I'm not going to take that away from him. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, that's awesome. I don't believe that my not connecting with it is preventing you from being able to do that. And so I guess you should be okay. I guess you should be fine. All right, 3 out of 10. Thanks. A House Made of Splinters is nominated for Best Documentary Feature. I'm surprised it actually got a nomination. I didn't think that it would get this much attention. Yeah, 7 out of 10 movie. If you want to hear more about it, I believe it was my Sundance video. Very depressing. It's a very sad movie. It's got good character to it, and it's presented really well. I like that movie a lot. Yeah. Fire of Love is nominated for Best Documentary Feature, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. You can watch it. I think it's on Disney Plus because it's National Geographic. Miranda July narrating and Sarah Dosa directing. Very great experience of a film. Watch it with really good sound and screen. I talk about this in more detail in my Sundance video. Highly recommend. 8 out of 10. Loved it. I thought it was great. Navalny is nominated for Best Documentary. It was very boring. It didn't really reveal anything in the documentary, and there was a lot of hype behind it because it was a surprise documentary at Sundance. It was very boring and kind of just opportunistic, and there was nothing about it that felt like it needed to justify its own existence. I was hoping for something more interesting or something that said a bit more and just didn't feel like it was wasting my time. More detail in my Sundance video. 5 out of 10. Thank you. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. I really enjoyed it. You can hear me talk about this in more detail on my podcast, Sardonicast. We talked about this. My biggest issues with the film would be the songs sucked. Most of the songs sucked. Really grating use of auto-tune, very distracting. Some of the songs were fine. There was maybe one song where it was fine. Depending on who the singer was, would influence how noticeable the auto-tune was. And it's so inescapable. And the lyrics weren't great. The lyrics were really bland and just unspecial, and there were moments of attempted humor in some of the songs that just didn't land, and it was just like, hey, what are you doing? The rest of the movie was awesome, though. I loved the rest of the movie. I thought that the animation was fantastic. Same animation company as The Shivering Truth, which is a show that I would highly recommend. I love that show. Watch that show, The Shivering Truth. It's awesome. The character design, so incredible. Just so many things going for this film that I'll probably watch it again. Maybe it'll make my end of the year list or something, but wow, those songs are just holding it down in a way where I didn't even feel like it needed to be a musical. Just get a better songwriter, please, better lyricist, and stop using auto-tune in that way, please. Some great voice acting performances. Yeah, we talk about it on the podcast, so go watch that. How about that? 7 out of 10. Thank you. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is nominated for Animated Feature. This is a feature-length film based on some YouTube shorts that were made like a decade ago, I guess. And it's very cute and very genuine. I like the soundtrack a lot. The animation is an obvious improvement from the YouTube shorts. I was worried with a film like this that it would just rely on it being cute without being substantive at all. I was worried that it would feel manipulative in terms of how it was presented, but it really did not come across that way to me. There were nice little bits of reincorporation. It was a very tight story that didn't feel like it dragged on for way too long. Like, I don't know, maybe you could cut out 10 minutes, but it's only an hour and a half. And it just flies by. I thought that the sense of humor was great. I love how the characters in this film were explored and developed. I love how music was used in the film. There was only one part of the soundtrack that I was a bit iffy on because it sounded way too similar to a song in The Lion King, and in terms of how it was used, it was similar too, and it was just like, okay, what? Why am I thinking about The Lion King right now? Otherwise, great soundtrack from Disaster Piece. Very versatile composer. Yeah, very, very not boring, very interesting and impressive visuals and filming style. I love the mockumentary format. It was cute, it was special, it was unique, and I'd really enjoyed watching this film. I would recommend it to basically anybody. 8 out of 10. It maybe was like teetering on the edge of overstaying its welcome by the end of it, but didn't quite get there. Really enjoyed this film. I bought the 4K Blu-ray. You jelly. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, nominated for Best Animated Feature. I hope it wins, honestly. I thought that the animation was fantastic. I thought that overall it was just a very funny, it was creative. It didn't feel like way too derivative and uninspired. It felt special. It felt like the people making the movie wanted to communicate something, and they did. And it's a movie that I would like to see again. I go into more detailed thoughts in this other video on your screen. Maybe if you want to hear me talk more about Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, then watch that. But yeah, definitely recommend this movie to everybody. Please don't watch the first Puss in Boots movie. You really don't have to. Doesn't matter. It's not good. Avoid that and avoid Shrek the Third. The other ones are fine, I guess. 8 out of 10, Puss in Boots. The Sea Beast is nominated for Best Animated Feature, and this one feels like kind of a weird nomination. It's a Netflix movie, and it feels super derivative and uninspired, and it's too long. It's 2 hours long. The first 30 minutes of the film are excruciatingly boring. Then the next hour is fine, and then the last 30 minutes of the film are excruciatingly boring. I don't know how a child could get past the first 30 minutes of the film. I don't understand how a child could be entertained by that. I was not entertained by it. Just a lot of unnecessary exposition. Really needed to get into what it was trying to do and just struggled to get there. Despite this being a new film on Netflix, it was not released in 4K, which is weird because a lot of films that Netflix owns and like TV series, they're like, oh, we're offering this in 4K because, you know, it's their property. And this one wasn't, and I don't understand why. It seems like maybe they just didn't have the budget to make it look that polished in terms of the textures or something, and they were just trying to hide that, like, okay, we'll just have it 1080p. Because they know it would look worse if it was in 4K. The textures just aren't that polished, I guess. The animation itself was fine in terms of how the characters moved. I thought that, you know, there's obviously a lot of talented people, talented animators working on this project, but it feels like it was held back by the budget. And I don't even know what the budget was, but it comes across as a movie that could have been so much better if it had more money to work with. I guess at the very least visually. Story-wise, not so much. It felt like they were ripping off specific scenes from other movies constantly. Yeah, I don't know if I need to name all of them. There's like some How to Train Your Dragon in there, and yeah, this is a weird nomination. I can think of at least one movie that would have been a better nomination, and that was The Bad Guys, and that wasn't even a great movie. That wasn't even like a fantastic movie, but it feels much more appropriate to have nominated that for Best Animated Feature rather than this. This one really feels like the odd one out in terms of the nominations here. Also, the lead actor, she was not great. She was very annoying the entire movie. Not convincing. She sounded very annoying.
Is it gonna chew us? Or will we get digested slowly? With acids?
She was irritating to listen to throughout the entire movie. I did not believe a single line she said. That's not great, because she's the main character. So that was annoying. And then I guess Carl Urban was the guy, and he wasn't great. He was kind of weird in the movie, but yeah, not very good. 4 out of 10. Not the worst movie, but the animation was better than Raya and the Last Dragon, that's for sure. The animation in that movie was embarrassing. Turning Red is nominated for Best Animated Feature. It was the Pixar movie. If you want to hear me talk more about it, watch the other video. It's kind of forgettable. It was fine. It wasn't the worst thing ever. 5 out of 10. Just like it's the Pixar movie. It wasn't even Pixar, was it? Yeah, it was Pixar. Disney animation and Pixar are just blending into each other where like it doesn't even matter which one's which anymore, you know? There was some style about this movie that I liked, but didn't speak to me that strongly. I don't even know why I watched it, honestly. Oh, probably because it came out on digital and it was easy to watch. Oh, yeah. 5 out of 10. Argentina 1985 is nominated for Best International Feature. I thought I was going to enjoy this film, and it was very, very, very boring. I tried so hard. I made it 42 minutes. There was no... If I don't care about anything that's happening at 42 minutes, and I even did some like research on the real political events happening in Argentina. I pulled up like the wiki plot summary just to make sure I was like really following what was going on without having like the actual cultural context that I would have by growing up in Argentina. And, you know, I could not get attached to anything that was happening. I kind of wanted to be watching other movies. It was not interesting enough in terms of its style or editing or, you know, it was all fine. The performances were fine. Just the drama was not compelling, and it took forever. Why is this movie 2 hours and 20 minutes? You know, the guy from The Secret in Their Eyes is in it. I was thinking, damn, that was a fun movie. Wish I was watching that. You know, the political angle reminded me of, you know, a film like No by Pablo Larraín. I wish I was watching that movie. I tried really hard, and 42 minutes is a long time to give a movie, you know, that you're just not into. So I dipped, and it was very I can barely tell you. I don't know if I could tell you that much about the film. I was so out of it. I thought I was into it. I wasn't even like zoned out thinking about other things. I was like intently watching the film, absorbing the things that were happening, but just not giving a single shit about anything that was happening, and wishing that it was structured differently or presented differently or was just more compelling to me. It didn't speak to me. And when you're judging the voice of a film, which is what I try to do, I don't necessarily try to provide this is what happened at this point, and then this happened, and then this happened. That doesn't necessarily make up a film to me. It really doesn't. The voice of the film, you know, you can tell that in the first 42 minutes, and the voice did not speak to me. The how things are presented more than just what's happening is how you're presenting what's happening, and it did not speak to me that well. Not compelling. 5 out of 10. It's not a rating for the whole film, just the parts that I saw. It's not a review, it's an impression, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it was not worth it for me to finish, and every other film that I had finished this year that I felt that way about wound up reinforcing that perspective. So EO is nominated for Best International Feature. It's a donkey movie. It is inspired by, what was that Robert Bresson movie? Oh, Hazard Bald Sahar. But I heard it wasn't a remake, so I didn't watch that first. I would like to see it. I know that that's considered essential, so I'll check that out at some point. But I heard that it was just inspired by it, not a direct remake, so that's why I did not watch that first. This movie was decent. I really loved what it was doing stylistically. I really loved what it was going for. The voice of the film I really loved. What dragged down the film was the ending kind of sucked. And, you know, when you have a film like this, I'm not going to spoil it. You can, I guess, hear me go into more detail about this in my Vancouver Film Fest video. I don't spoil it there either, but when you have a film like this, it's best for it not to feel like it's ultimately pointless by the end of it, and that's kind of what it felt like. And the majority of the film was great. I just wish that it ended better. So yeah, overall, loved the music in this film, loved the cinematography, a lot of really interesting and bold choices that this film makes. 6 out of 10. Probably closer to a 7 than a 5, I think. But fuck, I mean, yeah, it would be a point higher if the ending was just better. You know, it would be a point higher if the ending didn't suck. Because I was connected with it, and I really vibed with what it was going for otherwise. It's a donkey movie. The Quiet Girl, nominated for Best International Feature. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I wish that my copy had subtitles when they were speaking English and not just when they were speaking Gaelic, because the only reason this is nominated for international feature is because they were speaking Gaelic with some English in it. So, you know, it didn't prevent me from understanding the story, I guess. The way that this film is presented is very expressive, and it's not so out there that it's, you know, a Baz Luhrmann film, obviously. It's much more patient and reserved, but it's not without style. The 4:3 aspect ratio works really well for it. It's set in 1981, I believe, and it really captures the time period very well. The production design feels authentic. The costumes feel authentic. The location, it all just feels like a really nice, purposeful movie made by someone who wants to express something that's close to them. It makes me feel like it's something that hits really close to home for the director. Colm Bayraid, not sure who that is. And there's some really interesting choices in the sound design that I really enjoyed. It wasn't obnoxious. It was very atmospheric at points. It was genuine. It had a lot of heart and tenderness, and it wasn't manipulative. Well, I mean, every film is manipulative to some degree, but it wasn't explicitly manipulative. It wasn't annoyingly manipulative. There's some great lighting, some great looking shots throughout the film, and just watching it, it was so easy to care about the characters. It was so easy to care about what happened to them and what they go through. It's a movie where the characters really shine through the screen. The way that scenes are presented in this film just feels so meaningful and tender, and there's a clear passion for communicating an experience or a feeling, and it's so well communicated in this film. yeah, loved the characters. I was super invested the entire time, even if I didn't understand what they were saying for parts of the movie. But the voice of the film spoke to me. I could see what they were going for, and I was very entertained by it and just very invested. Just very, very much a film that connected with me a lot. And I hope to see more from this director. Definitely watch it. Definitely check it out. 8 out of 10. Easy 8 out of 10 for me. And yeah, perfect communicating the time period, the mood, the tone, the aesthetic. You know, there's ways that the film could improve for sure. It could have done more than it did, but what it did do, it did really, really well. And I loved it. Thank you. 8 out of 10. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed is a film that is nominated for Best Documentary Feature, directed by Laura Poitras, who directed Citizen 4 from my, I think, 2014 list. That was a movie I enjoyed. And I was pretty excited for this film. It won the Joker Award at Venice Film Festival, the Golden something. Lion? Top prize. This is a documentary that is about the Sackler family, which is a pharmaceutical family that pushed OxyContin on people, and they're basically just responsible for the opioid epidemic and a lot of loss of life. I was hoping to get a more informative take on that situation because I find that very interesting, and I was looking for kind of like a breakdown expose, just, you know, telling me the facts of what the situation is. But it was more of a movie about an artist/activist named Nan Golden. She has basically just been holding the Sackler family's feet to the fire, trying to get museums to not accept donations from them, trying to get their name to not be washed through money, and you know, she's trying to raise awareness and just be like, hey, this family is actually really bad, basically. It's an interesting film about her, maybe a bit too long. I feel like half an hour could have been cut from the first half of this movie. But I wasn't exactly satisfied with what this documentary explored combined with the length of the documentary. I didn't really feel like the length was justified. It's over 2 hours long. This movie, for the most part, had really sensible editing choices. It looks very professional. Great music. You know, it feels very thoughtful and personal for much of the film. Although there was one very weird editing choice in the film. There was basically a court hearing that was taking place over Zoom because pandemic, and they played a clip of a 911 call recording where someone screaming because they're discovering something sad that I might not want to mention on YouTube. And there was an editing choice to have the scream playing without showing where the scream was coming from and just have that going through the Zoom call without explaining what that was. And there was a delay of a few seconds before they said, oh, 911 recording as a piece of text on the bottom. I'm like, why would you delay that explanation? Was I supposed to be tricked into thinking that someone was screaming on the Zoom call, that someone in court was like having a mental breakdown or something? I just don't understand why that choice was made. That just seemed like a very bizarre thing to do, and it seemed like it was like an intentional misdirect, because why would you delay that information and just not show it? So that was really weird. Otherwise, the rest of the film, very sensible editing choices. It's well made, but I just felt empty by the end of it. A lot of wasted potential, and does not really dive into detail about the subjects I was wishing it did. And, you know, even if this was marketed to me, well, I didn't really see a trailer, so I don't know why I was confused about the marketing, but even if I was under the impression that it was less about the Sackler family, less of an informational documentary about the opioid crisis, and more of a sort of personal, like, this is the life of this person, even if I knew that going into it, I still feel as if there's a chunk of the film, like from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, that just felt so boring, and so much of it could have been cut out from that part. The rest of it was fine. Enjoyable movie. A lot of people really seem to love it. Probably check it out. But yeah, I just didn't manage to keep me engaged throughout the entirety of the film. I thought it was just fine. And I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. Thank you. All right, we're going to talk about some animated shorts. I watched all of the animated shorts this year. Let's start just in the order that they show up on IMDb. An ostrich told me the world is fake, and I think I believe it. You know, it was just a very hollow, very hollow film that thought it was much more interesting and intelligent than it is. It kind of feels pretentious, kind of feels like it's trying to be deep without actually saying anything meaningful. Just feels like kind of a worse and less inspired version of the Stanley Parable, I guess. I mean, it's not. It reminds me of the Stanley Parable. I don't know if anybody else will agree with me, but it just felt kind of derivative and lame. The sound design was very basic and expected. It's something that if I personally knew the person that made it, you know, and if they were my friend, then I could just convince myself like, oh, you know, this is great. Like, I would be impressed if my friend made it. But the fact that this is just someone I don't know and it's nominated for an Oscar, not great. It's something that thinks that the concept alone is worth praise, is how it feels. The ending is interesting, but it's not worth getting there, despite the short runtime of 11 minutes. The music was not special in any way. It was bland. 4 out of 10. Definitely not worthy of being nominated. Ice Merchants is a film. It's nominated for Oscar Short. It was part of the Critics Week at Cannes 2022. It's 14 minutes long. It has a really interesting style. Love the sound design. Really good music. Really interesting use of color. But I just wasn't super absorbed into the narrative. And it just felt like when they were introducing conflict, like sure, there was conflict there, but it didn't feel genuine. It didn't resonate with me, and I didn't really care about the conflict. And the resolution to said conflict felt a bit lame as well. Could have used something a bit more purposeful. And by the end of it, I wasn't really sure what I was left with. It was kind of forgettable. Great presentation, I think, for the most part. 6 out of 10. Thank you. My Year of Dicks is an animated short directed by Sarah Gunnardsdottir. And this is based on a memoir written by Pamela Ribben. It's about her being a teenager in the early 90s, trying to lose her virginity. Essentially, it's a memoir that she published about her love letters to boys, and I think it was titled "And Other Things That Shouldn't Be Public." And it has a fun sort of genuine self-awareness to it. What I love about this and a lot of my favorite pieces of media is that it's trying to capture something very real and honest and some sort of truth about life and the human experience. And it was a really fantastic style. I love the animation. It's very funny. It's very expressive. There's fantastic sound design. I really love the sound design. It's sensible and expressive at the same time. From the very beginning of the film, it's just immediately engaging. It's 24 minutes long. Doesn't feel like it drags on at all. I feel like I could have watched an entire feature of this. Loved the music. The music was awesome. It's very purposeful. There's so much character and personality in every aspect of this film. There's not a single element of the production that works against the film. Everything's very complimentary. And it's so personal. And I'm glad that this team came together to share such a genuine and personal experience in a way that's entertaining and has a lot of love and passion and heart and creativity going into it. It's really incredible. And there's talent to be found from everybody that worked on this film. It's a really incredible team of artists to everyone involved. So I would love to see more from just everybody that worked on this. I thought it was awesome. Easily my favorite short of the entire Oscars. My Year of Dicks, 9 out of 10. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was incredible. Definitely check this out. You can check it out on Vimeo. I think you can just watch it on Vimeo, so please watch it. I thought it was fantastic. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. You'd think that there would be a comma after the word fox, but there isn't, and I don't know why. Do they call that the Oxford comma? I don't remember. This is a 32-minute long film that is nominated for Best Animated Short, and it starts out pretty strong. There's really good music. There's a very interesting style. I love the art style to this. It's reminiscent of, children's books, and there's interesting kind of outlines to the characters, and yeah, it's a very intentional style. I love it. It started to remind me a bit of Winnie the Pooh in terms of like tone, and also I guess like the British voices, and I don't know, the character kind of reminded me of Christopher Robin in a way, and the mole kind of reminded me of Winnie the Pooh, and I was like, okay, weird. And this film really started to fall apart as it was going on pretty quickly, because it became apparent what it was. The entire movie is basically just this weird forced moral lesson where there is no moral lesson to be found within the film, and they just kind of keep reading out these like Hallmark quotes where at the end of each very short scene they'll say this takeaway that's supposed to be profound. They'll say it in a way where it's like it's wrapping something up like, oh, I'm so small. And he's like, yeah, but you make a big difference. And that would be great if it was at the end of something that happened, but nothing happened to justify them saying that. It seemed like every 30 seconds, after the first 5 minutes of the film, just every 30 seconds, they would try to ham-fist in this weird moral lesson Hallmark quote. And just, it didn't fit. None of it mattered. It didn't feel like it was earned or justified. There would be a part where the kid just says, like, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And then the horse is like, "The bravest thing I ever said was I asked for help. Asking for help is a brave thing to do." But it's just, it just... The thing felt AI generated. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and said this was an AI generated script. It just felt like there was no substance backing any of it up. The music was great, but after a certain point it started feeling manipulative because of the fact that it was just propping up a bunch of nothing. And same with the art style. Like, I loved the music and I loved the art style, but it felt like it was propping up nothing and not complementing anything, and so it felt hollow by the end of it. Just its purpose in the film, I guess. Yeah, there's a bunch of bookends with no meat in the middle. Yeah, it's crazy that that's the whole movie and it's 32 minutes long. That's the whole short film. It's just a bunch of Hallmark quotes, and they pretend as if things happened in the movie. They pretend as if there's actual meaningful, profound, substantive experience in the film, and it's just absolutely insanely hollow, and just literally an AI could have written this. It was just absolutely bizarre, and I was frustrated with what was happening narratively. There's weird sort of, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but you know how people criticize Lord of the Rings by going, well, why didn't they fly? Because the eagles. And if you think about it, that's not like a real criticism, because they would have been more easy to detect and they would have just gotten killed along the way. There's something like that in this film that is a real criticism, and it's it's one of those. It's if that Lord of the Rings criticism was a real criticism, that's what happens in this film, and that's weird. There's also, like, for a film that's trying to teach these moral lessons and is ostensibly aimed at children, some sort, like maybe all ages, but it's also supposed to be for children in some ways. There's a part of it where there's a character that's acting really aggressive. They're like, "I'm gonna kill you," and then the other character just goes up to them and is like, "No, I'll be your friend," even though they like. And the takeaway after that is just like, well, it's all a matter of how you react to things. And it's like, okay, that could be a moral lesson in of itself, but the way that it's framed in the film, you don't want kids to be going closer to people that are threatening them. You don't want kids to watch this and be like, oh, if someone's threatening you, if like there's a fucking dog barking chained to a fence, you just got, you control how you react to things, and I'm just gonna be friendly and pet it. No, that's a fucking awful thing to teach a kid. That's irresponsible. It feels like this is for children, and I feel like that's a really irresponsible way to communicate your message, and I don't know what they were thinking with this entire film. It was very frustrating. Emotionally, I want to give this a 3 out of 10, but I'm being fair. I'm being fair and giving it a generous 4 out of 10. Thank you. The Flying Sailor is a film. It's a short film nominated for Oscar Short. It's 8 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. That's on YouTube. It's directed by Amanda Forbes and Wendy Tilby. This was the first Oscar Short that I watched. The last one I'm talking about here, animated one that I'm talking about. It was very short and sweet, and I guess I'll throw out like maybe an epilepsy warning. There's some kind of strobe imagery at points in it, but I thought it was like really fantastic animation. I thought that there were awesome sequences, really great sound design. I loved the music, like absolutely loved the score. I love how the animation was synced to the music. It felt like it was very coordinated and planned out with the beats of the film and the score. The way that it's incorporated just worked really well. I loved it. I think it's an 8 out of 10, and I don't know why this one has the lowest rating on IMDb out of all the shorts. Probably because there's an overweight man and you see their penis. Like, I don't know, is that why? Are people just that insecure about the human body? I don't know. It seems like something that people, like, just get over it, It's like, what? Is that why? I feel like if there was no junk, then this might not, like, it's rated a 6 out of 10. I just don't understand. The human body, like, who cares? Anyway, yeah, wow. Good movie. Great movie. Loved it. 8 out of 10, 8 minutes. Check it out on YouTube. All right, so if there's a movie that you would have liked me to talk about, but I didn't, it's because I didn't watch it. Tried to watch everything. Couldn't fit in enough time. Definitely not watching all the shorts. Yeah, so there were a couple I missed. Sorry, everybody. Time is finite, and there are other more important projects to work on than watching every Oscar movie. And apparently the Academy agrees too, because they don't watch every movie they vote on. That's been documented. So thank you for listening to me talk about the Oscar movies. The nominations were actually not bad this year. I feel like this appropriately captured the year in film to a good degree. Perhaps Decision to Leave could have gotten nominated for something. Perhaps The Northman could have gotten nominated for something. You know, wasn't perfect, but there's a lot of cool nominations, a lot of first-time actor nominations for people that deserve to be recognized. So, oh yeah, Godland. Godland should have gotten a nomination for foreign language and cinematography, even screenplay. I don't know. Godland could have been nominated for like 5 different things in it. I would have been fine with that. Very cool stuff. And make sure to mark your calendars if you haven't already. March 12th, that's when the Oscars are. We're doing a live stream. I'm just reminding you at the end of the video on my Twitch channel. We will be live streaming. Also on this exact YouTube channel that you're watching it on, assuming that somebody didn't re-upload this. YourMovieSucks.org YouTube channel. We'll be streaming from there as well. I will not be streaming the actual Oscars, but I will be streaming our reaction to the Oscars. So please join us. Gooble gobble. Thank you.